Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The law is very clear that EPA may not consider costs in setting a national air quality standard to protect the environment. The Supreme Court specifically addressed the issue in 2001. The court wrote that if EPA established a standard by, quote, secretly considering the costs without telling anyone, unquote, it would be grounds for throwing out the standard because the administrator had not followed the law. I'm concerned that this is exactly what happened in this case. The record before this committee shows that the unanimous recommendation of the Clean Air Scientific Advisory Committee was rejected by you, Mr. Johnson, apparently on the basis of White House opinion or desire, to which you apparently acceded, given the change in your position from February 22nd to March 12th, for which there is no explanation that is reasonable other than what the White House told you to do, and much weaker standards were finally selected. I want to know, Mr. Johnson, during the agency's consultation with the White House, did White House officials express concerns about the costs of implementing the ozone standards?
Sir, are you referring to the primary or the secondary standard?
Either one. Did they express concerns about the costs of implementing the ozone standards with respect to either primary or secondary? And I will just point out for you that your administrator, Mr. Peacock, said that it is clear that the prohibition extends even to secondary standards.
That is my belief, and that's the way I operated in my decision-making.
Did the White House express concerns about the costs of implementing either the primary or secondary standards in your consultations with the White House?
As I said, for making a decision, it was my decision alone, made independently, and I cannot consider and did not consider costs, nor whether it was implementable.
Mr. Hodes, I don't think he's answered your question.
I know. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. Here's my question. Not what you considered. I'm asking you, Mr. Johnson, during the consultations you had with the White House, did the White House officials express concerns to you or your agency about the costs of implementing the ozone standards?
Well, if I did recall, I'm not sure that it would be appropriate for me to get into who said what at what point in time. In fact, I believe that it's important for me and others, future administrators, to be able to have candid discussions with members of the executive branch. And as I said, I made the decision. I made the decision without consideration of costs.
Sir, let's stop
and that's
there.
The important.
Let's stop there because I want to pursue this and I want an answer to my question. When I hear a witness start talking to me about if I did recall, I wonder whether or not the witness is being evasive. Do you recall having discussions with the White House concerning costs of implementing the standards?
I have routine conversations with members of the executive branch.
So it's a simple yes or no answer. Do you recall?
It's not a simple yes or no answer because I have routine conversations on a multitude of issues, and I'm saying is that on this issue, I made the decision. I understand what the law directs me to do, and that's not to consider costs. And I did not consider costs.
Let me go back. Do you recall, sir, search your memory, having conversations with the White House about costs in implementing the standards?
If I did recall, it would not be appropriate for me to discuss the nature of those conversations.
So you won't tell me whether you do or do not recall?
As I said, it was not part of my decision-making.
That's not my, sir.
That's the important piece, sir.
With all due respect, I'm asking the questions and you're answering them.
And I'm answering. You don't like the answers.
No. What I want to know is do you recall or don't you recall?
I said, even if I did recall, it's not appropriate for me to get into the nature of discussions I have within the executive branch.
And the basis for your refusal to answer the question, is it your lack of recollection or some assertion of privilege?
I'm not asserting any privilege at this time, but I think that it's important. I think that it's important that I and future administrators have the ability to have candid conversations. And I also believe that that's important, and certainly as the agency deliberates on issues that are before us. And I think that that's an important privilege, and also I think that it's an important principle that I need to maintain for me and for future administrators.
I'll try this one last time. You understand, sir, you're under oath before this committee.
Oh, I understand that, sir.
Do you or don't you recall having conversations with the White House about whether or not costs were considered by the White House?
As I said, that whether or not I recall or don't recall, I don't believe that it is appropriate for me to discuss the nature of those conversations. I believe it's appropriate for me to be able to have candid conversations. And I also said, under oath, that I did not consider costs in making my decisions.
Thank you, Mr. Hodes. Your time has expired.